Kylian Mbappe. Before we get to this, Janusz, let's put a full screen up for everyone to have a look at, comparing his form this season with the previous 8 seasons. Now, there might be a little asterisk beside this because a lot of those seasons were not in La Liga. This one has been. He's been playing in France. He's been playing elsewhere. So he's got 10 goals in 20 games. I love the fact we're saying he's struggling. It's the end of the world. He's got 1 in 2, but it's not what we've come to expect. And he's missed 2 penalties in the last 8 games. Why aren't we seeing the goals flowing for Kylian Mbappe right now? Just 3 in his last 10. What do you think?
Well, first and foremost, you have to look at the team as a whole, and they do have issues, and we need to get this out of the way because it seems trivial, it seems easy to go to, but I think as a player, when you're missing key players, I don't care who you are, you're going to pay the price for it. Manchester City are paying the price for it. Liverpool has paid the price in the past when Van Dijk and others weren't playing. The key players, the key leaders, right? So when you look at that team and you look at, even Vini missing, the back four has been an absolute disaster. You're missing the leadership of Carvajal, who for me was the best player in the world, or Ballon d'Or worth it, right? I mean, Rodri got it. I don't have a problem with that. But let's be honest, when you honestly look at everything that he's done, the trophies that he's won, he was the best player in the world. He happens to be a defender. That's why he didn't get it. I'm shocked that Rodri got it, by the way. So you look at Mbappe and you look at Real Madrid as a whole, you can understand why that is. One of other problems is, that, when you compare that to PSG, there is a difference, of course, but I also think that he left PSG a year too late, re-signing for that 1 year where he could have been at Real Madrid, and that introduction with someone like Toni Kroos would have been much easier, right? Because that midfield doesn't provide Mbappe or Vini for that matter, right? I mean, Vini has had his struggles this season as well, and that's not just not gelling perhaps with Vini. And we'll get to that in a second. But that midfield doesn't create like it did before. So that's another problem. The biggest problem for me is that this is Vini's team. He's the undisputed leader of this team, right? And this team is missing a number 9, which neither Vini or Mbappe are. Yep. And, the interchanging in the game and all that good stuff, it'll work because they're super talented players. And from time to time, we're going to go, ooh, ow, when they do it. But for long term, that's not going to work. And as I've said, you look at Kylian Mbappe at Paris Saint-Germain, he was a clear leader, even at the time that Messi and Neymar was there. Everything was about him, right? Just like everything was about Ronaldo at Real Madrid, where even Karim Benzema had to kind of lower his expectations. And look what he did in the sort of job he did when Ronaldo left. We saw a true Karim Benzema. So I'm not saying here that Vini has to leave, but it seems to me that some of the things that I've mentioned and the fact that he needs to concentrate on things on the pitch. He's had issues off the pitch on top of that. And that happens to great players, Mark. And I think that's the reason. And I will even add, just guessing here, that, he's not a player that Carlo Ancelotti would have asked for.
I understand that, and I get that, because last season, everyone knew their role. Bellingham could play off the front players or player. Vini one side, whether it was Rodrigo on the other side or whoever, they all kind of knew what they had to do, and it worked. Yes, they had Toni Kroos. Yes, they had Dani Carvajal, who was fit. So what does Carlo Ancelotti have to do to make this work? Because you're not going to get Carvajal for the chunk of the season because he's out injured. Toni Kroos is retired. Does this setup and these players, is it sufficient to win this title the way it is right now? Or can Real Madrid, or do they have to sign someone in January to complement what they have right now to give them a better chance of winning the title?
I would look at every option. We keep reading, we're not going to sign anybody in January. We don't do it. We're the Galacticos. We have this, that, or the other. I mean, you may have to go everywhere. You may have to think about Carlo Ancelotti. He's not the most flexible. When things go well, That's Carlo. Perfect, right? I mean, nice and quiet, understands big personalities. And of course, when things are going your way, it's a little bit easier. You still have to know how to do it, by the way. And Carlo, I don't want to take anything away from him because he was the best manager in the world last year, rightly so, by the way. But for that flexibility, or maybe for changing things, he's kind of stuck into his old ways. He may have to, because right now others are paying the price for it. I mean, Jude Bellingham is paying the price for it. I mean, by the way, he's not playing badly. He just has to do so much extra work defensively. Fede Valverde is playing every minute and every second just about. He's paying the price with some mistakes. He's a wonderful, wonderful player. So you have to look at that as a whole. I mean, does that mean you bench Benzema? Sure, why not? I mean, sometimes it can be explained by rotation, whatever it may be. You have to try just about everything and look at the team as the most important part of it. But as I've said before, I think that for for Vini Jr., or for Mbappe, or even for Rodrigo, I think you need a focal point there, a center forward. I mean, part of me kind of, people have said that, but it would have been nice to see if Joselu was still there, right? How you play without him. Now, that doesn't mean that all three would play. Sometimes you play Vini, or maybe you try Mbappe on the right-hand side. Nobody can tell me that he can't play from that side. Maybe it would have been different. Maybe he would have had to get used to it, but I think a whole team would have benefited from it, because neither Vini or Mbappe in this case is the sort of player that you want to play with back to goal. You want him to break. You want to use his dynamism, his pace to go at players from deeper positions, which, by the way, Real Madrid does very, very often. Did it last season in Europe and in Bundesliga, if given the opportunity, right? Where they play on the break a little bit. And that's Kylian Mbappe. You're not going to get much, anything else. Part of me wonders, Mark, why are people so surprised in so many ways? I mean, if you look at it, it's logical. It kind of makes sense, because he's not playing his game here. It's kind of difficult. So I'm not making excuses. He should do more. But Mark, I'm going to give him every benefit of the doubt, and I'm sure he deserves it, right? This is a player that scored a hat-trick in the World Cup final. So let's just wait and see. And as you said, his numbers are not tragic. It's just that he's expected to carry the team at a time that personally he's out of form. Off the pitch, there are some issues with him as well. And on the pitch, I mean, this team is missing a lot of key players, and that midfield is not functional. And oh, by the way, that's not Mbappe's fault.
The Real Madrid jersey's not too heavy for him, is it?
Look, I don't know him personally, but I just said it. How would you say that? Looking at the numbers he had at PSG, that's pressure. Maybe not the same, but big time pressure, of course, because we know how much money they've spent. We know who owns them, and we know who the Holy Grail is. And scoring a hat-trick in the World Cup, you can't tell me that that he doesn't know how to deal with pressure.
When they signed him on a 5-year deal, apparently around 15 million a year, which was about what Ancelotti was getting at Everton, by the way, back in the day, but 150 million signing on fee, which he got his dream move, and Real Madrid got the dream player that they've been looking at. Now, I want him to stay. I want him to do well. I want all the best players in the leagues to do well, because it's better for us. And look, from a narrative perspective, then we've got a story if it doesn't happen. But if they were to get a call in the summer from an agent representing, say, a Saudi club, say, what are you thinking? Is there any chance whatsoever that you might be amenable for whatever cost it is? We would pay whatever to get Kylian Mbappe. He's 25. Would you immediately slam the phone down, or would you listen if the 3 goals in last 10 continues throughout this season and Real Madrid don't win the Champions League or La Liga?
You always listen, but it doesn't really matter, because he would have had to want to go to that place, and I don't foresee that ever happening. We're just getting there. Let's hold our horses. It's not a great start. It's not an easy club, right? To kind of get into. So I wouldn't even contemplate that. First and foremost, you have to find an environment for him to be successful. And right now we're 4 months into the season, and there are struggles, right? But you can hardly say that Carlo Ancelotti, Real Madrid, Kylian Mbappe, and everybody else have come up with a system yet to suit him. And perhaps it's too early. We can maybe talk about it after the season if this continues. But right now, I mean, that's crazy. And oh, by the way, they got him on the free. I'm paying him a lot of money. They got him on the free as well. So he's going to have a say. It's a complicated thing, and I think it's crazy to even think about it at this moment.
This is an easy thing it's kind of tabloidy. It's always not doing well, kick him when he's down. Shoe on the other foot, playing devil's advocate. There's just as much of a chance, I would think, that we look back, Kylian Mbappe, 3-4 years down the line. Remember, he signed a 5-year deal at Real Madrid. He's flourishing. He's scoring a goal a game, or the way that Haaland was at the previous clubs before he joined Man City. And we think to ourselves, you know what? We sat here in December 2024 and we were like, oh, is the shirt too heavy? Should he be considering moving elsewhere? Because in 3 years' time, who's to say that Kylian Mbappe, of what we know and those numbers that PSG suggested, because there's just as much, for me, likelihood that could happen as this will continue the way it's going.
Well, we just simply owe a player like that a little bit more respect, don't we? Yep. Right? I mean, look, I mean, not, a month ago or 2 months, or let's say in the summer, we were talking about him. If France wins the World Cup, wins the European Championship, he would likely be probably Ballon d'Or winner, right? Because it was that sort of question. How is Vini going to do in Copa America? We know he hasn't done it. I mean, Spain, if you can call it, was a surprise to a degree because how young that team, De La Fuente had to. I mean, is really, really rebuilding that, and they're Spain, obviously. So one of the favorites. But I remember. I think pretty much everybody was talking more about France, Germany, or England in terms of that. So we're not that far away from him doing a great job, as you mentioned, at PSG. This is the next level, of course it is. But I think we'll let's just wait and see for that, because you're quite right. If he hit. It's still, the numbers aren't terrible. I mean, the numbers tell you something. I know there haven't been spectacular goals, because if I remember, a lot of his goals are kind of normal. I think everybody take a normal goal, but not, maybe, a yard beating 3 or 4, 5 players, and everybody's kind of used to it because that's the way he plays, the missed penalties. I get that. But I mean, you absolutely have to look at the function of this team, which is, because of injuries, because of the change in the midfield, is for everyone to see. This is not a Real Madrid from last season or the season before that.
Mbappe, finally, is 7 goals behind Lewandowski. Real Madrid are 4 points behind Barca, but Real Madrid have got a game in hand.
Hey, remember, Lewandowski was the worst player in the world last year. I mean, they everybody wanted to get rid of him, and Xavi didn't like him, and oh my goodness, even in Poland, where I cover him on the national team, he's done. It's over. 36 years old. Function of new manager. Different function of the team, players coming back and healthy, and it's a different story. Although, as we know, last couple of games they struggled themselves as well a little bit. But we absolutely have to give him a way more time than that.
And finally, what's more likely, that Mbappe overtakes Lewandowski in the race for the Pichichi, or that Real Madrid can overtake Barcelona, knowing fine well that if they win the game in hand, they're only a point behind?
I mean, both can happen, and they may not. But as we've seen it here, Barcelona just a couple hiccups like that, and this terrible Real Madrid are they're about. Although they had that opportunity, look what happened to them last game. So it's a funny old game. But I definitely put that down. It's not an excuse, but as players. When a one key player goes down, you can, these days you can always kind of, you can help it. But when you have 2, 3, 4 players missing, as a player, I always remember, certain guys when they weren't around, just the feel in the dressing room was a little bit different. Let's not be silly here and not to think that within that dressing room, that your shortcomings when you go out every game. The key players know.